Hey everyone, Face here. Well, it was inevitable. This will be the final episode of Modeling 101 because we are almost finished. All we've got left to do is just some basic weathering and to highlight the panel lines and hit it with a final flat clear coat, and we'll be done. It's been a long road. There was a while when I never thought I'd actually finish it, but proud of myself, proud of everyone for sticking with the show and watching it and making it a moderate success. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate every view that I get. So first up, we're going to start by highlighting the panel lines. If you're not familiar with panel lines, basically, just looking at the model itself, like along the wing, you can see all the little recessed little joints between panels. That's what we call a panel line. And there's various schools of thought about how it should be done, whether it should be done at all, but that's beyond the purview of this show at this time. There are a lot of different techniques that you can use to highlight your panel lines. I find the easiest one is using artist's oils. You can get these at any craft store, hobby store, anything of that sort, and thinned with mineral spirits. Depending on what kind of top coat you're using for your model, mineral spirits generally won't harm your paint, but you're going to want to experiment before doing it on the entire model. Try it on a scrap piece of painted plastic first, just in case, because you never know if you might have some kind of adverse reaction. In addition, you'll need an old wide bristled paintbrush, some sort of container. Same with when I clean my paintbrushes, I just like to use the bottom of a 2-liter pop bottle, and a clean dry cloth, as well as some Q-tips would also be handy. For a dry cloth, I like to use just an old t-shirt. There's just an old shirt that doesn't fit me anymore. But you'll want to wash it, after every use, just to, get all the crud out of it. So you've got your tube of oil paint. This is a Winsor & Newton brand Lamp Black. What you're going to want to do is just basically take unscrew the cap and squeeze out about maybe a half a centimeter long bit of paint, about the size of a pea, essentially. I trim it off usually with a hobby knife, just so that it's easy to work with. And then just put it in the bottom of your container and just kind of loosely jab it with your brush and kind of loosen it up so that it's a little, so that it's smoothed out. Then you'll want to take your mineral spirits and just pour enough in the bottom, just a little bit, not a huge amount. One of the reasons I like to use the bottoms of the pop bottles is that because they've got the 5 little, I don't know what you'd call them, lobes or whatever, the little legs on the bottom for stability, that gives you 5 little spaces that you can use to work with your paint in, to kind of blend it to the consistency that you want. So if if you need it a little bit thicker, you can add a little more paint. If you need it a little thinner, you can add a little more thinner. There, now that we've got our paint and our thinner all prepared, this is the easy part. Basically, just load your brush up. You can do this one of many different ways, but I like to kind of just dollop it on the entire model. That way, not only will it get into the panel lines, but it'll also kind of give it a grimy external appearance when you go to wipe it off. There, you can see now the wing is basically fully black blackened by the oil paint and in thinner mixture. Now, if you just were to let this dry for a couple of hours and go to wipe it off with a slightly moistened rag, that's why we need the clean, dry cloth. If you slightly moisten it, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll explain that point when we get to it. For now, we'll just finish applying the oil paint to the rest of the model. So you can see now that the entire upper surface has been coated. Now we're going to let it sit for a little while, and then we'll give the upper surface just a good wipe down with the moistened cloth. Essentially what we're doing is all these panel lines, the paint will settle into these panel lines, and then we'll wipe it off with the cloth. So that it'll give the illusion of greater depth to the panel lines. It'll give some more depth. But not only that, by wiping off the paint with our cloth, it'll create kind of some streaking, some variation to the color. That'll overall make the aircraft look a little bit more realistic, I find. Now, your mileage may vary, but I find that it works quite well. So it's been about an hour. And I've been doing kind of a gentle wipe down of the model, and I'm pretty happy with how it's been turning out. One thing I like about this technique, as I think I mentioned, is that it kind of creates a realistic griminess. I find that it creates like some streakiness. I don't know if you can quite make that out. But it mottles the surface even more than the paint that we added earlier, and gives it kind of a dirty appearance to it. So yeah, as you can see, it's looking suitably grimy, but you can. It's not so easy to tell on the upper surface because it is such a dark color, but on the bottom especially, you can tell. You can see much better. The panel lines are much better, more visible, and overall the entire aircraft has kind of a grimy look to it, as you would imagine an actual combat aircraft would. So overall, it just has a much more grimy, weather-beaten kind of look to it. Now, we're going to let this sit for another couple of hours. Let the mineral spirits completely evaporate off of the surface, because it does take a little while for it to fully dry. Because we do have a little bit more weathering to do yet before we finally finish this thing up. So it's been a couple of hours, and all of the mineral spirits have pretty much dried up. The model is at this point, this stage of the weathering is now finished. I don't know how much you can really tell on the upper surface, but on the bottom, if you look, say, at the wing there, you can see nicely defined panel lines with some shading into all the recessed areas. Next step is going to be to add some carbon scoring, just some dirt, some more defined dirt and grime, which I like to use Tamiya's Weathering Master sets. I believe there's 4 or 5 different versions, each with 3 of these little chalk pastel trays, each of them having three different colors. I mean, this one having snow, soot, and rust. There's another set that has some metallic colors that are good for like engine exhausts, for like heat discoloration for engine exhausts. Others have different colors of rust or grease or whatever. I like to use these just to kind of create a random smudge pattern across parts of the model, especially around the guns. I try not to go too overboard with them, but I will show you how they work. So they're very much like a makeup compact. You flip them open and you've got a little applicator on the inside with a little sponge applicator on one end and a little brush on the other. I tend not to use the brush very much, but the sponge I use quite often for like exhaust burns and for the gun ports. So I'll quickly just give you a little rundown of how they work. You just take your either end, whichever you prefer to use. Like I said, I typically use the sponge end, and just kind of rub it against into the powder, or into the pastel chalk, and kind of break it up into a powder. You'll end up with a fair bit on the tip of your sponge, and then on whatever surface you're going to apply it to, we're going to do it just on the gun exhausts here, or on the gun ports, just to kind of make for some greasy, dirty, scoring burn marks just on the gun exhausts, or the gun ports, whatever you want to call them, the gun barrels. So now, see, just with a couple of seconds of application, you can see that one's got kind of some black smudging on it, while the other one is very clean. You can create much more elaborate smudge patterns using these. I've made large carbon scoring blast marks and whatnot, say on my Fine Molds Millennium Falcon model. It's got lots of big blast marks and carbon scoring all around it. Most of which was done using one of these, with a little supplemented by my airbrush. So now you can see I'm doing just a little bit extra around the engine intakes, and I'll do a little around the exhausts as well. Doesn't hurt to do a little bit of an application inside the gun bay as well. And again, see, you can see on the one engine here, I've done a bit of just some soot discoloration smudging around the exhaust, whereas on the other one it's still very clean. It's really not complicated, and but it really adds to the realism of the model. It's also sometimes handy just to add like a random kind of smudginess overall to the entire aircraft, just to kind of break up the monotony of color. Now, it's probably not anything you'll be able to make out on camera, but I've added just kind of a very subtle hodgepodge of scoring and just smudging here and there. You can see there's a fairly well-defined one just by my finger, and another one just by the on the wing there. So the entire purpose of weathering is to make your model look lived in, like it's actually a part of the world. Because if we were just to apply the decals and call it finished, then it might look like it was fresh off the showroom floor, but it wouldn't look lived in. It wouldn't look like it was actually a part of the world. So weathering is basically the last step that really makes the model look like more than just a model. It makes it look like an actual miniature aircraft or vehicle. Now that we've got this, this is done. This is essentially finished. Now that we've got all the weathering essentially finished, I'm ready for the final step. Before the final assembly, which will involve nothing more than just putting on the gun bay doors. The final step is a flat clear coat to seal down all the weathering that we have done to finish off everything. if you'll notice, also, the canopy, I still have the canopy masked. The reason for that is that if I were to have removed the masking in a previous step, the clear coat, the flat clear coat, would essentially frost the glass. I've talked about this in other videos, I believe in my electronics tutorial series, how I like to frost glass to diffuse light. The effect in this case would be to render the cockpit opaque, essentially. You wouldn't be able to see through it anymore. So that's, you know, always, the masking tape is essentially the last thing that you want to peel off of a cockpit. Is the last step of the model. And for me, that's one of the hardest things to do, because that's like waiting for Christmas Day. It's waiting to peel off that masking tape. It just drives me crazy. But now that we've got the weathering finished, we might as well just go ahead and do our final clear coat and finish this sucker off. So as it turns out, I don't actually have a bottle of flat clear, so we're gonna use semi-gloss clear. This is Testors Model Master semi-gloss acrylic. It's a very, very good product. I've used it a lot. It really works very well, but you want to make sure that you use it fresh, because the older the bottle is, say if it's more than about 6 or 8 months old, will actually damage your finish. It has a tendency to the clear coat will actually crack and not give you an even finish, ruining your model. So I've already gone and poured a little bit into my my paint cup. So we'll go ahead and thin it the same as we do with any other paint, just about a 2-to-1 margin. Give it a good stir. And like always, you're going to want to give your airbrush a test. Make sure that you've got your paint to thinner ratio correct. Alright, so that looks pretty good. And we'll use the same technique as we've used for every bit of spray paint, every airbrush we've used before, just the same wide pass, the same cautious, perfect pass we've used on every other bit of painting we've done so far. Well, the clear coat has all dried up. So, in other words, this thing's basically finished. All that's left to do is to attach all the little add-on bits and pieces and peel off the masking, and she's done. So for masking, for the masking tape, I like to use the edge of a hobby knife very, very carefully so as not to scratch the canopy. And just, if you slide the knife very gingerly under the edge of the tape, just enough to pull up a corner, then you can peel it off. And there you go. You have an exposed bit of canopy glass. Alright, so now I've got all the masking tape removed. You can see inside the cockpit again. And if you'll recall, back when we first started painting this thing, I painted that layer of dark gray over the canopy framing. And though you can't actually see it on the video, in person you can tell that the framing is the proper color on the inside. So I'll have lots of pictures of the finished model up on escalemodels.com, so there will be a link down below to the thread where you can see that. So yeah, now I'll just start adding on all the little extra bits and pieces, and she'll be finished. And so there she is. Notice the two bombs under the nose. There's a little antenna you probably can barely see just under the, or just behind one of the landing gear. And the gun bay doors are open. So, in other words, this sucker is finished. So, what else is there to say? I hope that I've been helpful. I hope that you've learned something. I mean, I feel that if I've inspired a single person who's seen this to go out and pick up a model, you know, for the first time or for the first time in years, I don't care. I mean, I just hope that somewhere out there someone has gotten something out of this series, and that you know, maybe now they're not quite so intimidated by the idea of getting into the hobby. So that being said, thank you everyone out there for watching, and happy modeling.